I'm going to obviously go through my experiences. It's not as scientific. I'm not a psychologist. It's more from what I've learned, how I overcame everything, and as I say, when I wrote my book as well, everything I say is just through experience. Okay, so you can't take everything. You can't take away and say it scientifically, blah blah blah. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank Scottish Athletics for putting this on, because it's such a great evening and such a good opportunity to get the topic out there. And there was an article in the paper yesterday from Susan Egglestaff talking about how amazing it is that Scottish Athletics have taken the first step to do this and actually put a seminar on and making the subject not be such a taboo subject. So I'm going to give Scottish Athletics a round of applause, actually. So what I'm doing now, I am a retired athlete. So the last time I ever jumped was in Glasgow, and I did retire after Glasgow, mostly because I just kept getting injury after injury, and I got to the point, I thought, right, I want to help other people in sport rather than living through my own dream. I want to help other people. So my background, I was a high jumper, came through as a junior, but actually started pretty late, to be honest. I was 16 when I started athletics. Was a swimmer before that, so I was actually been sporty my whole life. I used to do everything. I used to drive my parents insane, and my brother. So what I'm going to be highlighting is just the awareness around support for coaches, and if there is any athletes in the room that are currently suffering, and looking at it from a parental point of view as well, but from an athlete perspective. Okay, so Darren was laughing at me with my iPad as my clicker. Anyway, okay, so as I said, I started athletics fairly late, and it almost didn't happen for me, actually, because on the first day I was meant to go to the athletics track, me and my dad fell out because I was being a stroppy teenager, and he almost refused to take me there, so this whole thing might not even have happened. Coming up into athletics at 16, I actually catapulted forward very, very quickly, which was an issue for me with eating, because I went from pretty much being unknown to being an elite athlete on the international stage within 2 years. So that was quite extreme for me and a bit of a shock, to be honest, because you're not exposed to that environment. It's quite tough, okay? So 10 years ago, well, more than 10 years ago, I'm showing my age now, probably like 12 years ago when I started athletics. How old am I now? No, so yeah, 13 years ago. Oh my goodness, it's because I'm 30 this year, it's crazy. So 13 years ago when I had eating issues and I realised that potentially my habits and things that I was doing weren't actually productive to my day. There wasn't much support at all. In fact, if anyone said, oh, so-and-so's got an eating disorder, it was like, don't talk about it, hush, hush, keep everything quiet. There wasn't much awareness at all in the media. People didn't want to speak about it, and that was a massive issue for me. So I've not actually pressed my clicker. This is bad, isn't it? Okay, so this is a bit of a background to my sporting background anyway. So Commonwealth Games High Jump finalist in 2014, European Junior Championships in 2007, which was my year that I went onto the international stage. I'm a 6-time national high jump champion indoor and outdoor. Scottish triple jump record holder for the junior record holder, still there. Hopefully it will go soon. And I was the first female to jump over 13 in the triple jump in Scotland. And recently I just won an award for Role Model of the Year last year because I published my first book. So my book is about basically my issues and how I overcame them, and I wrote that to help other, not just athletes, anybody who's suffering from mental illness or eating disorders, to help them overcome them and find what I call freedom. And the reason it's called Freed is that ED is a shortened version of eating disorder. Back in 10 years ago, when I first sort of realised that things weren't in a great place. Because you couldn't open up and speak about stuff, I was literally so petrified to tell anybody. And actually, I'm going to go back. Technology. Let me get all the things back up. Sorry. I didn't want to open up about anything. I was afraid to tell people, and actually, initially, when I first realised I did have issues, it was due to my coach approaching me and saying, I think you've got an eating disorder. And it automatically just went, no, I don't. So it was interesting, some of the questions that came up there at the end of Louise's one, because I was like, wowzers, that's what happened to me. So I think one of the key things is being aware of what you say and what you do in terms of how you approach an athlete. So no, it doesn't want to change. Okay, the purpose of tonight. So it's key experiences and key messages from my experience. Raise awareness of eating disorders and how this can affect both male and female athletes. Okay, recognize the signs and how to communicate with your athletes. And what resources and support are available out there. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to sort of go through the pinnacle points of my journey to freedom and highlight some of the key things that happened and key things that probably catapulted me downwards and how I came back from it. So a lot of people, and Louise covered this as well, think if you, especially before, like when I was first diagnosed, they think that automatically within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that it's just something that can be cured, and it's just not, okay? It's something that takes a long, long time. You have to be ready, and one of the questions that came up as well, you need to be ready to accept where you are and accept that you want to move forward from it. And a lot of that is identifying maybe what is actually causing the athlete to be at that point, okay? One of the things I want to ask, actually, I want everyone in the room to raise your hand if you know somebody or worried about somebody who potentially could have eating issues. It doesn't even need to be an athlete. It could be anybody you know. If anyone wants to raise their hands. Okay. Keep your hands raised. Everyone keep your hands raised. Sorry, I'm very interactive. Out of everyone that's still got their hands raised, who is worried or scared to approach that person? Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Oh, don't drop your hands. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Okay. Out of those that have still got their hands up, the reason that they're afraid is because they don't want to make that person worse. Keep your hands up. Yep. Okay. Do you mind if I ask you why? I'm not allowed to go past here, otherwise I would come over. Okay? Okay.
But I've just noticed like a massive drop in weight as well. It just doesn't go over very well, so I would,
you wouldn't want to.
I'm not trying to say something, I just no longer kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Someone else had their hand up. Oh, Alison. Don't worry, it's okay, I'll forgive you. Okay, so I'm going to go through my journey now. So, pinnacle points for me, 2006 was the start of my downward spiral, okay? I'll talk you through my 2006 year. I was deciding whether I wanted to go to university or not, deciding which university I wanted to go to, and at that point, hadn't really considered choosing my university over what I wanted to do with athletics, because I was relatively average, I would say. I hadn't broken through on the British stage. I enjoyed athletics, But as I said, I'd only been doing it for 2 years at this point. So I didn't really think, oh, I'm going to choose which university I'm going to go to so I can consider what I'm going to become as an athlete. So that year, I started the year out of nowhere, went to the British champs, like the indoor ones, the under 20s, and I got into the final of the I used to do long jump as well. I used to do everything. Got into the final of the long jump, came fourth in the high jump, and it was a bit like, where's she come from? And I was like, oh. But this was the start of me becoming obsessive. So signs and symptoms, we used to go, if we travelled down south, I would literally be a nightmare to travel with. I would, if we didn't eat by a specific time, I'd throw a tantrum, horrible. I would be really stressed out about it. I'd always have snacks with me just in case I couldn't get to eat. And if I couldn't eat by a specific time, I wouldn't eat at all. I'd refuse because I thought it would affect my performance the next day. It did raise concern, obviously, with my parents, who sent me to a nutritionist because at this point I wasn't supported by Scottish Athletics, or I'm funny because it wasn't down here. So my dad sent me to a nutritionist to go and get my nutrition sorted out. And what she noticed, that at that point, I actually didn't eat very healthily at all. Like, when people say, like, when you've got an eating disorder, that you eat ridiculously healthy or like you're over-obsessive, actually a lot of the time your food choices aren't that great. And what I was actually eating was just not nourishing my body at all. So she changed everything around. And from when she changed it, that's when I became even more obsessive with what I was eating. So it came into the summer, and I went down to the British junior, the under 20, under 23s, which I don't think it is that anymore. The 3As it used to be called. No, some of the youngsters won't even know what that means. Okay, so I went down to Bedford, competed there, and I came third, which actually was a complete shock because I knocked someone out of actually going to the World Junior Championships, which I hadn't jumped the qualifying height, but for me that was crazy. So that night, we're sitting with my coach, John Scott at the time, and we were discussing, well, what am I going to do for university? Because I didn't realise I could do what I was doing. So we decided to go. Decided to go to Stirling University because I could travel back and forth to Edinburgh to train with John. But that winter, I was obviously had the guidance of my nutritionist, and I was being really, really over-analytical with my food. But I was still nourishing my body quite well. But I was just very, very OCD with everything. And I used to get pulled up all the time with how OCD I was with planning. Like my diary, it was colour-coded down to the T of when I was going to go to sleep, eat, meet people, and actually like go to bed, get up in the morning, what time I was getting ready at. It was completely colour-coded. And that's like a massive sign, is OCD, and a massive trait of someone with an eating disorder. 2007, obviously I've come out of nowhere in 2006. 2007, we had this amazing day at the beginning of January, Darren will remember it, where like everyone just kept jumping records at Kelvin Hall. And that sort of, again, catapulted me forward. I was like, I don't know where this has come from. And I'd literally just switched into triple jump at this point. So that, before I was just doing high jump and long jump. And then now I was all of a sudden doing triple jump. That year pushed me forward onto the international stage. So I'd gone from, don't know how, winning a British medal to being the British junior champion indoors for the triple jump. Getting a bronze medal on the same day in the high jump indoors, and then I got to compete in my first GB vest in an international against Holland. And this was like the first time I'd been exposed to the elite environment of how people talk when they're at events, how people analyse food, how athletes can talk each other down, basically. And it used to be, it wasn't so bad at the end, but it used to be such a bad environment. Which led into this exposure after 2007, because I went to the European Junior Championships for 2 weeks with a group of athletes, and that was that was a crazy experience for me, to be honest, which led to me wanting to just do more and more and more. And I was overtraining, which led to a stress fracture in 2008. My coach knew I was overtraining, but he couldn't tell me that I was, because I was going to do it whatever. I was in that mindset. At that point, I hadn't identified that I did have issues, but I just kept doing more and more and more. So it led to a stress fracture in the December, which highlighted and flagged issues that potentially I could have some severe eating issues. This also meant moving into 2000. Why is it? Oh dear, we've got a technical error. Oh, 2009 is not there. Okay, 2009 says 2009 was my year that I basically realised and admitted that I had an eating disorder. So the season didn't start well. I came out, I was underperforming all the time. Didn't understand why, because I was like, I'm the lightest I've ever been. Obviously, in a high jump, it's a power to weight ratio thing. Like, surely I should be jumping higher. And then I didn't qualify for the European Under-23 Championships, which I should have. And I was really, really disappointed in myself. But again, I couldn't see why. Why hadn't I done it? Why hadn't I qualified? I was training so hard. I was analysing everything. I was analysing my food. I just couldn't see why. And then it came to this summer, and I decided that I was going to move to Loughborough. I'm not saying there's a thing about Loughborough and the bubble, but it can be quite an intense environment. You go from obviously training at Meadowbank, where you're wrapped up in a million layers in the winter, to all of a sudden you're at 21-degree heat every day at Loughborough, because they keep the high pack at a specific temperature. And you've got everyone around in crop tops all the time, people talking about stuff, people analysing you, looking you up and down. It's like, it's bizarre. And I moved down there to train with a coach, and it just went from like bad to worse, and it just got worse and worse. That it got to the point that at my worst, I literally just didn't want to be here. And the day I admitted was October the 29th, 2009, that I had an issue. I went to the doctors, and I'm not going to slate the NHS, but went to the doctors, and they were like, we'll put you on some Prozac to rationalise how you think, and a waiting list for 6 months. So literally just got left to get on with it. And the effects of Prozac, if you do not take it properly, has the opposite effect, which then sent me even more crazy. So not that I was crazy, but I literally completely lost who I was. Obviously, it tones down your personality, it tones down everything about you. And for me, my whole thing was I was quite a bubbly athlete. Like, I would go out there and have fun, and all of a sudden I just had nothing getting me out of bed in the morning. That some days I couldn't even leave my bed. It'd be weeks on end. I wouldn't speak to people, socially remove myself from everything, because I didn't want to be out socialising, eating food. I didn't want to be around food. And then my home environment was even worse, because people I was living with also had eating issues. So it became just this really, really toxic environment. That one night, it was early November, I actually texted my mum and said, I can't do this anymore, I'm really sorry, goodbye. And that was, for some reason on that night, and I talk about it in my book, that night I went out and I just wanted to disappear. And I was walking, I was thinking about everything that people had said to me. Why did I feel like this? Why was I allowing myself to be like this? And it was this crystal clear, I'm not kidding you, crystal clear evening. Moon was so bright. And something on that, I'd been out for hours, and something on that walk just was like, Jayne, you've got to get back and you've got to sort this out. What are you doing? Why have you let yourself get to this point? So I went, that sounds like a story. I went back, but I was in a really, really bad place. So eventually I went to get my therapist. That would have been I think it was not till the March. So it was literally 6 months. I've been spending that amount of time though trying to work on myself. I was really, really struggling with how to eat, because you completely lose what your body is meant to be doing. I was similar to Louise. I went from 47 kilograms to 65 in the space of a month and a half. I was literally, didn't want to see people. I looked so horrific. But then you go from that, I was too skinny to train, but then I was too fat. And that's what I kept getting told. And I'll never name anybody, but yeah, that's what was happening in coaching back 10 years ago. I can't believe I'm that old now. So that winter was tough. I went home for Christmas for a long period of time trying to sort myself out. Came back and I was like, right, I'm getting back on it. I'm going to be okay. Came into the 2010 indoor season. Obviously, it's Commonwealth Games in Delhi that year. And I'm like, I should be ready to properly go for it. I was coming to compete for my first competition was in Glasgow, actually. And if 2 days before, I was like, I don't want to do it. At this point, I was pounding in. I wasn't in shape. Obviously, I'd put on a lot of weight. I was taking as many diet pills as I could to try and lose weight. I didn't know how to eat properly. So I'm like, I need to try anything I can. I phoned my coach 3 days before I was going to compete and said, I'm really worried about competing on the weekend. I don't feel like I should. And I got told, you should be worried. And I was like, okay. Competed, obviously, don't know why I was competing, should never have competed. And then didn't want to call to see how bad they had done, because I just knew what was going to come down that phone. At this point, I was like, I need to change my environment. I have to change my environment. And there's further on throughout this presentation, I've got a picture of the one man who literally brought me back to life, my coach, Graham Ravenscroft. He met with me on May the 20th. I know the dates down to T, I'm a bit of a weirdo. May the 26th, 2010, we met at Loughborough. And he pulled me aside and he was like, what are you doing? Why? You need to look at who's driving your bus. Who is on your bus? Where is your bus going? What is your destination? And I'm thinking, Graham, I'm not even on my bus right now. I don't even know, what my destination is. I know I want to go to Commonwealth Games, but it seems so far away from here right now because I'm in such a bad place that how am I going to get there? And he was like, right, what we need to do, you need to put yourself in the front of that bus. Right now, you need to draw the bus as it is, put yourself in the front of the bus. Who do you need on your bus to get yourself to that destination? And that was one of the most powerful tools someone's ever taught me. And I use it again and again and again to analyze different parts of my life, even now. So 2010, I decided to not even attempt to go to Delhi. I was like, I need to sort myself out. I need to get myself better. And I need to ensure that I'm in a better place to move forward further. So we just went into winter. I mean, we laughed. By the time we got to December, we did laugh that when he was putting med balls into my training session, I was like, well, if I just kept the weight on Graham, I would have been able to do this anyway without med balls. But we used to joke about it. He was brilliant. So we really pushed through 2010 and worked closely with Graham and another coach called Emily Parker, who was employed by British Athletics at the time as an apprentice. And we brought me back through to 2011, which I call the comeback year. I came out in 2011 and I had, obviously, a new coaching environment, had a new group at that point as well, because my old group I was embarrassed to be around. When I went down to the track, they used to laugh at me and ridicule me. And I was like, do you know what? It doesn't matter. If they want to be like that, they can be like that. I'm just going to come back. So came into the 2011 season, jumped to PB. Straight out, actually, yeah. Qualified, had to re-qualify to actually go to the British Champs because I hadn't jumped for so long. Qualified, started coming back, and then jumped, actually, my PB is still from that year. That's quite bad. So I came back and jumped a PB that year, and I was consistently jumping a PB. And I don't know if they still do it now, but they used to have this table where you would earn points throughout the season if you competed in different events, and then you would win a cash prize at the end. At the end of the season, you had to all compete in the final event of the year, and I actually won it that year, so we had to split the prize money, and I was like, right, this is good, I'm back. Then, 2009's in there now. Okay. So 2012 was 2 steps forward, 1 step back for me. So at that point, I was going through quite a tough time personally, and I made a few changes in my life that year to enable me to be 2 steps forward again. I came out, the indoor season was starting to struggle a little bit with eating again. I sort of realised that probably my issues weren't around potentially knowing how to eat. My issues were around actually dealing with my emotions. And I was like, okay, this is big. I need to actually go and deal with my emotions. So 2012, in the February, decided to go and get private therapy. I hadn't seen a therapist, the NHS therapist, since I went the one time, which didn't work very well for me, so I didn't go back. And I started working with a therapist weekly, like Louise, paid privately. Luckily, I had the support of my parents, and I was running my own personal training business at the same time. So, started going forward, obviously making some positive changes. Came out in my second competition, and I rolled my ankle. And I'm thinking, why? Why now? Because this is one of your first opportunities to gain qualifying heights for Glasgow. So I was like, right, it's okay. I'm going to take the rest of the season off. I had a misdiagnosed, I can't even remember what the injury was, but they misdiagnosed it. So I had to go back into boot because the physio were giving me 2 advanced exercises for the injury. So I had to go back into boot. But then that spiraled me. Whenever I had stress, that spiraled my eating. So I'd always go more controlled again with my eating once I was stressed. So came back from that though. 2013, power. Okay, so 2013, I felt like what I'm going to highlight is I've probably not completely dealt with my issues until I've retired from sport, okay? I managed to control my issues when I was in sport, but when I retired, I've now lived a life that people wouldn't even mind. I came home for Christmas, it's the first time ever this year, that I was like, I don't want to train today. Mum was like, what? Never heard this in my life before. I was like, it doesn't matter. And that's like a massive, like little things like that is a massive step forward, okay? Anyway, I do go off on a tangent sometimes, sorry. 2013, power. Okay, so I came out that year and I basically was like, this year I am qualifying for the Commonwealth Games 1,000,000 times so no one can tell me I'm not going next year. And I did. I came out, I jumped 5 qualifying heights, 5 times I jumped. But then my season was then cut short again because I had an accident in the gym where I fell from the top of a weights block with 75 kilos on my back, and I only weighed 55 kilograms at the time. So I got a compression fracture down my spine. This for me, I should never have gone into the gym anyway in the first place that day. That morning, I was still, like Louise was saying before, I was still managing how I ate. So sometimes I'd be under-eating, sometimes I'd be overeating, but there was a balance that was manageable for me. That day, I was tired. And my coach that was doing my S&C stuff, David Parker, said to me, Jayne, I don't think you should be going to the gym today. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm going to go back to, because I was coaching kids as well at this point, I'm going to go and coach. I used to always be really energized after I coach because kids just bring you energy. I come back, I'll have a good session, and then start doing my warm-up set, and then boom. And that basically knocked me out for the whole season. Firstly, it caused my whole core to disengage, that I looked pregnant. Obviously, with someone who has eating issues, that is not great, okay? So mentally, it literally sent me to Wale. So that year was difficult, actually. I remember in the summer, I was looking at, like, juice cleanses. I did all these stupid things again. And it got to the November, and I'm like, what are you doing? And at that point, again, I put on more weight. And I'm like, oh, not as dramatic, don't worry. But I came out of that winter and I was training my butt off, but I was also eating better. I was trying to consciously eat better, and every time I felt like I was slipping off, I'd go back to my bus and I'd be like, right, what do we need to do? Do a vision board, like how do we need to get back on track with everything? Then, you're coming into 2014, I actually, interesting fact, I competed at my heaviest weight I've ever competed when I jumped my PB. And throughout the whole time, I'd always be like, I've got to be a specific weight, because if I'm not a specific weight, I'm not going to jump very well. That year, I almost went backwards. I made a comment to somebody who was helping me at the time and said, listen, I'm weighing this weight, but I'm jumping like so well, I don't understand. And he was like, well, you look like you weigh that weight. And I'm like, what? So automatically, and it didn't mean anything by it, but he didn't think about what he said before he said it. So automatically, I'm thinking, oh my God, I look fat. But I never looked fat, but I was just like stronger. And we went away one with the training. I came back, and the first session I had when I was away, I jumped. I'm never ever going to jump it again, but we had like an amazing session where I jumped 192 off a box, which is like a little 10 centimetre box of a short approach. And then me and Graham were thinking, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And then a few little things started niggling, like comments about, you're always choosing the super healthy stuff, you're always choosing the, whatever it says like power food or superfood, you always choose that one. I'm thinking, do I? And I started getting more and more conscious when I was away, that I came back, opened in Loughborough, and I had nothing to give. I was so skinny again. I think I weighed something like 54 kilograms. I was lean as a rake. I had nothing to put down on that floor. And Graham pulled me aside and he went, Jayne, do not allow this year to affect you. You have come so far. Take 2 weeks off, come back, and let's go for it. So I took 2 weeks out of competing, completely changed my competition diary. I barely competed that year anyway, and came back, and I opened up on I think it was the 30th of August, 30th of July, came out Commonwealth Games qualifying, and went through first time. Qualified in first place. And for me, it was like, that was almost, it sounds really bad, it was better than the final, because it was like, I've done it. I walked away from it. It wasn't like the emotions of, I've made it to the Commonwealth Games. It was like, I've actually overcome something that's held me back for so long to get to this point. And unfortunately in the final, I got a stress fracture in my foot. But that's that. That's fine. Okay, so went out on a low. But the aftermath of an eating disorder, I'll probably come back to it because I am rambling on a little bit. The aftermath of an eating disorder is, I am now in the best place I've ever been in my life. But since 2014 to now, I've had major health issues to the point that I had ulcers in my stomach, which I am probably one of the most stubborn, I was the most stubborn athletes anyway, Darren will agree, that I just always knew what was right for me and didn't think that easing back off, and I'd always just get up and get on with it. I was just like, I've just got to get on with it. Had ulcers in my stomach that burst, and I was violently sick with blood. And when I went to the hospital, he was like, actually, I'll tell you what I did before. I went to work after it happened, because that's what I'm like as an athlete as well. I would just get on with it. The next day, I was literally, they pulled me straight back in. They did blood tests. They were like, you should have had a blood transfusion yesterday. My blood levels were so low, they had never seen, they were like, I don't even understand how you're walking into here. That pushed me back so far. I couldn't train for 3 months. And the only thing that it could have been was from, I used to have bulimia more than anorexia. Obviously, I used to just abuse my stomach. And I think the same day, this is so bad, the same day that all happened, one of my teeth rotted away. And I remember going to when I was at the NHS, and he was like, you do realise that your teeth will rot and da-da-da. And I'm like, no, they won't. And talking about how the after effects of having eating disorder, like at the time you're like, it's not going to happen, it won't happen to me, but it does happen. And this all happened at the same time, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And since then, I've actually been diagnosed with celiac disease, which was, again, another like turmoil to like go through, because I had to start analysing food again. But now I know how to deal with my triggers, and now I know how to stop when things happen. But how much longer have I got, by the way? Oh, that's fine. Cool. Okay. Right. So that is my journey, okay? I'm going to talk in the next slides about how my coach influenced me in different experiences throughout it, okay? So I'm going to do a couple of facts. The prevalence of eating disorders is much higher in elite athletes. Agreed? Yes? I'd hope so. Okay. Please keep working. Food research, but 1.6 million people affected by an eating disorder in the UK, and that is only from people who admit it, okay? And if you think off that 10.6 million, 0.101% of that is an elite athlete, the facts are alarming, okay? When you think of like about 20% of women athletes and 7.7% of males, this is just varied research, all research is very different, 20.1% of that 0.01% that are elite athletes are affected by an eating disorder. That's a crazy, crazy stat. I need to point it. I'm pointing at the wrong thing. Okay. Okay, athletes have to have nutrition regimes, correct? To an extent? Yep. So most athletes will have a strict training regime and diet to support health and performance. This is an issue if you are got an eating disorder. And I think there's that balance, and Louise was talking about it before, there's the balance of being too strict and not being strict enough. And I genuinely say, in terms of actually athlete well-being, it's better to be slightly overweight than underweight. Well, it definitely is. Okay? Some might have a team to guide them through this. So obviously, I went to a nutritionist. I got a team around me. I did get support from Scottish Athletics as well to help me do that. And others who are unsupervised are at higher risk of an eating disorder. So that does affect a lot of people from the club level up to those at elite level, or those just below elite level. So there's a lot of people that are left unsupervised to just try and work out what they should be eating by reading things on the internet, which, again, we all know isn't great. Okay, weight and performance. Some athletes will train at one weight and then compete at another weight. Who has athletes that have their training weight and their competition weight? Yep, okay. That's normal in the sport world. I used to have my training weight and competition weight. It's just finding that balance of what is healthy. And obviously you have your peak weight of where you want to be, especially if you're in a weight-specific sport. So obviously, same before, like high jump, it's beneficial to have a low weight in terms of power ratio. And the same for like long jump and jumping events. Distance events, obviously, you don't want to be too overweight. Gymnastics, boxing. There is different sports within everywhere that obviously need to train at one weight and compete at another. Okay. Personality traits. Personality traits we associate with elite athletes. Perfectionism, high self-control, obsessive behaviours, routines, self-drive, goal-orientated. Extremely important when looking to achieve sporting excellence, but can also provide the perfect environment for an eating disorder to grow in. Do we all agree? Yay. A bit louder. Okay. Yeah, so it's a perfect environment for an eating disorder to grow in. Perfectionism, obsessive controls, as I said, I had massive OCD when it came to planning. I'm much better now, but it still can be, when I get stressed, I'll still be OCD with planning. Okay. Recognizing signs. Okay. Types of eating disorders. So Louise obviously went over it. I'm going to add in another one. It's not gone in there. I'm just going to put them all up. Body dysmorphia. Okay. Body dysmorphia is a massive thing. Does everyone understand what body dysmorphia is? Yeah. So it's when you think you look one way, but you don't. You look completely opposite. So you look in the mirror, and you actually aren't the person that you think you are. So it happens a lot in guys where they want to be muscly, and they actually really are very, very muscly, but they think they look really, really skinny. So recognising signs: social removal, drop in performance, obsessive eating, i.e. I mean really, really obsessive over times of eating, fatigue, overly emotional, secretive, especially if you're bulimic, you're very, very secretive, you'll sneak away, you'll hide food. It wasn't till we were talking about my book with my mum, and she was like, I used to hide food and didn't even remember it when I was like 10. I used to hide food because I didn't want to eat it and hide it in cupboards, and then I used to chuck it over the fence. Didn't even think about it until last year. And so that's like signs that you don't even realise until later on when you reflect back. Addressing the athlete. I'm going to do a little task with you all. How long have I got?
3 minutes.
Oh, maybe I won't do the task. Okay. Right. How many times has your own personal emotions affected how you communicate with your athlete? So you were saying about, how if you come in with your emotions and you've had a bad day and you inflict it on your athlete and you don't mean to, but you're standoffish, and that athlete's come in and they're literally really, really struggling. Obviously, it's your duty of care to ensure that you're open and available for your athlete. And I have been at the receiving end of that, obviously, as I was saying, and it drives you backwards. You don't think that you have anyone to talk to. You think that you're stupid. You think you're embarrassing. Okay, so addressing the athlete. Be cautious. Choose your words wisely. Let them know you are there. Okay, I'm literally flicking through these now. Okay, supporting an athlete. How are we going to support athletes? Okay, there's so many different ways. I think the ways covered it really, really well. But coach-athlete relationships are massive. I've got a picture of me and my coach for the next slide. But my good experiences, obviously I'm saying about Graham, we had a very, very good coach-athlete relationship. I could go to him about anything, and I would literally talk to him about everything. He'd be like, well, okay. And he actually came, we still communicate all the time, even though I've not been competing for 4 years. And he came to my book launch and actually introduced me at my book launch, which was amazing. Bad experiences, obviously I've discussed my bad experiences, but it can have such a detrimental effect on the athlete. And the Scottish Athletics Athlete Care Programme, obviously that's a great way now to help support athletes and ensure that there is that guidance between club athlete and elite level. I promise I'm rushing, I promise. Okay, and being open for support and ensuring you don't burden them. Okay, so don't overburden the athlete. If you think they've got an issue, don't keep going at them, because they have to be ready to accept. So this is me and my coach, Graham, at my book launch in November in London. So he introduced me. I just want to put that in because genuinely he's been like the biggest support for me, and I think that can show you the impact that your coach can have on you. And I still go for him for life guidance, business guidance, because he's amazing. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Admission and getting help. Okay, so admission and getting help, I'm going to come down to the end where I've got a list of resources, similar to Louise's though anyway. Beat, I'm also a Beat ambassador. I do events for them, actually running the London Marathon for them. In 3 months, I'll probably start training properly. So I'm one of their ambassadors too. And going to quickly mention my book. So I've done Freed. The purpose of Freed is to give an insight of my journey to help support and nurture athletes and anybody else who has mental health issues and give them a step-by-step guide. Okay, I don't talk greatly about, it's not a story, it's a step-by-step guidebook to give them a strategy to help them identify where they are now and how they're going to find their freedom. We'll flick through these. So it's talking about support, hope, breaking silence, finding freedom, and helping younger athletes know they can break through. And it has 7 steps: accepting where you are now, what are your triggers, understanding self-sabotaging beliefs, redefining yourself and rising up, moving forward, mastering your best version, and realising freedom. So that's my book cover, by the way. That sums my personality up right to a T. Okay, so available resources. Beat, psychologist support, nutritional support, and actually Mind Charity Online. I use them quite a lot because depression is a big thing that is associated with eating disorders, and I have used their emergency help quite a lot over the years. So here's some of the available resources. And if you want to, sorry, I'm plugging my social media. If you want to follow me on social media, these are my social medias. And that is me. Over to you, Darren.